Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks. I'm your host Nacho. This week I'm joined by my colleague
Dan.
And we have a very special guest for you here. We are joined by the founder of the avant-garde Belgian brand, Ressence watches. Welcome, Benoît Mintiens, to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and hello everyone.
Yes, it's great to have you, and we're really looking forward to getting into the brand and to learning a little bit more about you, about the brand, and about your watches, of course. But first, let's do a little bit of a wrist check. So which watch are you wearing today? Or
well, actually, I'm wearing two.
I think I gave it away when I said watches. I already knew.
But so I'm wearing a Type 2, and I'm wearing a Type 3.
Excellent.
So these watches are good representations of what we stand for as a brand, and that's why I wear them.
Excellent. Perfect.
And you always wear two watches?
No, usually I wear one, but this time as I expected some questions about watches.
Of course.
I thought, okay, I have two wrists, so let's take two watches.
Perfect. Fantastic. And we'll be giving our audience, our video viewers, a little bit of a closer look at these with some B-roll as we talk. And then I'm sure we'll circle back and speak a little bit more about these watches specifically. Dan, what is on your wrist today?
Yeah, we were talking about like, hey, what are you going to wear for the Ressence episode? And we don't own a Ressence watch.
Right.
So we tried to get a little closer.
Yeah, but it's also getting something similar, getting something that's even in the same thought space is almost impossible. Really,
exactly.
If you think about it. I mean, but what have you done with today?
I tried to get close with. No, exactly. It's an Oris Artelier Art Blakey, and it's inspired by Art Blakey's. He's a jazz drummer, and he had a Gretsch bass drum, and that's what the dial is inspired by. But it has the same pebble kind of shape that a lot of Ressence watches have, and it's also simplified and I think very minimalistic and elegant. So I think that's more or less in the same spaces as your watches. So,
perfect.
sure.
Yeah, I think that is really quite a good choice for the episode. I've kind of played it safe and gone with something that's from us here at Fratello. It's a RZE limited edition that we released earlier this year. So it's a titanium watch with a carbon dial. It's the Resolute Pro Contour, as we called it, and it's. Also a little bit modern, but yeah, certainly not similar to what you guys are doing with your watches. Perfect. But with wrist check out of the way, we can get started with some of our questions. And of course, we would love to hear a little bit about yourself. So please tell us a little bit about your background and how you made it from your origins into then Ressence watches.
So basically, my origins are I'm Belgian, of course, but my background is industrial design. And so before I started Ressence, I worked as a consultant for about 12 years, an industrial design consultant. And that defines a lot about how our watches look, why they are as they are. So of course, I'll explain that a bit later, more in detail. But so you have to know that to understand why Ressence looks like it looks. Right. So it's a very, very important starting point, basically because it defines the vision we have on fine watchmaking.
Right.
So I did that for 12 years, and then 2010 I started Ressence.
And what are the kind of things that you worked on as a consultant?
It's an interesting company because it's based in Antwerp. It was a very generalistic design company. So we worked. So there was about half the business was generated by transportation projects, like typically trains, trams, buses. We had quite some clients, by the way, in Holland here. But I was more the generalist in that organization. So I did also these projects, but I did projects like medical devices for oncology treatment.
Okay.
Quite heavy. But I also did fast-moving consumer goods. I did furniture, of course. I worked many years for Browning. So those are shotguns. So some people are scared about it, but I'm not a hunter. But I designed these products. I went. It's actually very very wide and very interesting, and it really shapes the way you look at product design in a very wide, broad sense of the word. And again, this is really the way I try also to apply these logics, these methods of thinking to watchmaking.
Right. And what were some of these sort of specific ways in which having this background in industrial design influence your approach to creating? I mean, I suppose a watch is a very functional object, but how specifically did your background in industrial design influence your approach to watches?
A product for an industrial designer, the reason of existence of a product only comes through its function. If a product does not execute its function in a proper way, you have a lousy product.
Okay.
And so when it comes to watchmaking, if you look at a watch on your wrist, from my point of view, as an industrial designer, the service or the function of a watch is to express time.
Right.
And so the starting point of everything we do is always function driven. So we start from there, and then we design the watch around that function being the expression of time. And so many, well, let's say nearly all the decisions we take when we design our products are always defined by this central core concept of being functional. But being functional can also be, I look good with it. It's fine.
Sure.
Or I look rich with it. It's also fine. But we, as a brand...
You can define your own function.
Yeah, well...
More or less.
Well, you define your own function by buying a certain brand or a certain product.
Yeah.
Right.
We have decided that it was expressing time.
Right.
That's, by the way, also where the name comes from. Ressence stands for Renaissance de l'essentiel. The rebirth of the essence. For us, the essence is to express time. So it's the rebirth of how you express time. And so the starting point for us is always these functional ergonomical approach.
Excellent. Perfect. And were watches always something that was in your field of interest? Where did your first sort of experience with watches themselves begin?
I'm going to do a little coming out here. I'm not a watch freak, but I'm a product freak.
Okay.
I like products since I'm a kid. I'm one of these kids that dismantled products to see how they work inside. I'm one of that kind.
Right.
I was nearly always able to put it back. Not always. So products in a general way, but the way they work, the way they interact, the relationship you have with the product is a fundamental, central theme in everything we do. So a product that interacts badly with you generates a negative energy. A product that interacts positively with you generates a positive energy. It's we as humans. We still are cavemen. We have brains, caveman brains still. Some think they don't, but most of them have it. And when our brain was not trained to interact with products, it was trained to interact with other humans or with animals or maybe with plants, but not with the tool, with the machine or with the thing. So, and you sometimes see it. People give names to some products. It's because we need to. Well, our brain looks at the product as if it is a creature, and so if the product is responding like a creature, like something alive, you will get a positive interaction and a positive energy by interacting with it.
Okay, interesting. Because that is how, sort of, in essence, we are wired in a subconscious, like in a deeper way, I suppose.
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. So for my next question, then I will ask you, when first envisioning Ressence, was the departure point one of design or mechanics? I think from what you've told us, perhaps we already
none
know
of
the answer
them.
there.
The starting point was the function. The starting point was, how can I make sure that sometimes I try to explain Ressence the following way. Imagine yourself, there is no watchmaking. It does not exist. There is none.
Right.
No history.
Right.
It's never been made. It's not there.
Remove the baggage.
There's nothing. And then comes, I'm an industrial designer, and comes Dan, who has a lot of money, and he says, Benoît, I have an idea. I'm a little fed up in taking out my cell phone always out of my pocket to see what the time. Can you not imagine something you attach to your body? Easy, it's always there, and you can read the time on it. Well, and because he's a smart guy, he says, I would like you to make it mechanical.
Okay.
Because batteries, that's not so good. That's maybe not so ecological or whatever. Make it mechanical. And I said, yes, good. I like it, because mechanical things, you get more empathy for mechanical things than for digital things. Yeah. So let's make it mechanical. Well, the answer would be, you asked this question in 2024. The answer would be the way Ressence looks.
Right.
No rear view mirror designing.
Right.
No retro design or whatever.
Yeah.
So we really look at watchmaking from a 21st century context, a 21st century point of view, and we design a product with the logics of how a product today in 2024 is designed. Right. That means that, and what is the difference between 100 years ago and now, because most watches were designed 100 years ago? Well, the difference is that there has been a shift in what is central. 100 years ago, the most important aspect of a product was the function and the way the engineering aspect of it.
Right.
And the consequence of that is that when an engineer designed a product, a watch, for example, the user, the wearer, or the person that is interacting with that product will have to adapt to it. Because the central thing is this machine or this thing does what it needs to do. And you, as a human, you have to adapt to that engineering. Well, today, this has shifted completely to who is going to use it, who's central here. It's not the machine anymore. The technology is there.
Right.
It's the human that is at the core of things. That's why, I don't know, I'm probably the oldest here, but when I was young, my father bought a PC. Big box, a bit grayish, with a black screen and a green cursor. Yeah,
really big.
Blinking.
Screen,
yeah, MS-DOS.
Right.
So most of them, no one will know what it was, but MS-DOS was the code. It's like iOS today, but it was called MS-DOS. And MS-DOS was, you had to code something in code with slash, back, double points, things like that. You had to adapt to the machine.
Yeah.
I had to adapt myself to that machine. But for those who have kids, of 3 years old kids, they can find the pictures in the iPad. You don't even have to explain them how it works.
No.
So this product computer has evolved like species do. There is an evolution of species, but there is also an evolution of products.
Right.
Products evolve, and the fittest, the one that adapts best to the human or to the user, will be the ones that survive.
Okay.
And so every generation of a product is a product that is, again, more adapted to the user. And that is how some products evolve and some products die, because there is a new species, a mutant that came and that suddenly was more adapted to the user or to the application. And so that will overrule the one that was before. So that is the logics that is also valid for products.
Excellent.
And like you say, the Ressence watches are mainly mechanical.
Yeah.
You're using a module on top of an ETA movement.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about how this combination of the two works?
Yeah. So basically, a Ressence watch, the complexity lays in the dial. And again, I'll explain you why. It's because the dial is the core of the watch for us. Because the dial is the function that expresses the time.
Yeah.
So it's there that we start. And the whole mechanism, so a dial, for example, on a Type 3, the parts that form the dial, there are more than 200 components only to do the animation of the dial.
Yeah.
Wow.
But this dial needs to run. So we use a movement. Today we use ETA bases that we modify. Of course, the many. Actually, what we keep is the bridges from that movement.
Okay.
Right.
We change most components inside, but okay, that's technical. But the only thing that we keep in that movement is the minutes.
Okay.
There's nothing on that. We take out the hours, we take out the seconds, we take out the date, we take out the crown. All these things are not in these movements. You cannot use them in a normal watch anymore because we only need the movement, the minutes.
Right.
And the minutes, they drive the module. So we use the movement really as a kind of motor that drive the whole system.
Right.
So this approach is valid for basically all our products.
Excellent. So then the elements that you are maintaining are the barrel, right, for power, some of the escapement, and perhaps some of the gear train that ultimately
we
moves.
We changed the barrel, we changed the gear train.
Right, of course, to provide more.
We changed those. We keep the automatic system, but even there we modify parts of it. So yeah, it is a very reliable base engine, as I would call it. And again, the reason you buy a Ressence is for the dial, and so we have a very different approach. The reason, the fact I'm not a watchmaker, explains that for me the movement is a mean and not an end on itself. For sure. But okay, I perfectly understand. That for a watchmaker, of course, the movement is a core of his trade. That's normal.
Was that a challenge at the beginning when first working with watchmakers? Because to them, maybe it felt like you were trying to build the house,
upside down
from the starting with the roof. But
it depends how you look at it. I'll explain you. When you're a watchmaker and you want to make a watch. Let's say you want to start your own brand, what is quite logical. When you're a watchmaker, you create a watch brand.
Of course.
And I think most watch brands in the past have been created by watchmakers. Well, they always start with the movement. That's where they start from. You have a very nice book here about Jaeger-LeCoultre.
Yes.
Well, typically these people, they are really watchmakers. Their core is the movement. And when you are a watchmaker and your core is the movement, you start, of course, with the movement when you design a new product, and then you will put it in a case, or you of course have to add the dial and put your name on it. Jaeger and LeCoultre, there were two, and then you put the hands on it, and then you protect it in a case, and then you attach a strap, and you have a watch. But when you're an industrial designer, I start with you or with you. And I ask the question, why do you wear a watch? What context do you live in? And I start with that. And then I say, okay, but you need to provide this service, expressing time. So we start with the outside because that's that's where the function happens for us.
Right.
That's the core of a watch. It's to express time. So we start with the core for us, the dial. So we start with the outside and we dig into the watch and we end with the movement basically.
Right.
When I design a watch, it's not like that, of course. I have to consider all the aspects. But just to explain the energy goes to where we consider the function is happening.
Of course. So you're designing it in this industrial way, which means that you're putting the human, the user interface first and foremost. Do you find that there's a difference when somebody who knows watches, who has been around watches and understands like the basic function and way to interact with a classic three-handed watch with a crown, do you find that they find one of your watches perhaps less intuitive than someone who hasn't really interfaced, like a younger person, a kid who hasn't interfaced with these mechanical objects as much? Do they find it a little bit more intuitive? Is there a separation like that?
The word intuitive is a very bad one when it comes to watchmaking. Why? Because if you have kids, again, you will have noticed then when you explain them how a watch expresses time, it's absolutely not intuitive.
Right.
And again, the reason for that is because 200 years ago, the engineer, that was a watchmaker, he found a way to rotate an axle at the same speed all the time, whatever the power in the barrel. So he was, I'm finished.
Right.
Okay, now I have to make sure, how can I now show the time? Okay, I'll put some hands on it and a dial and it rotates and then they'll find a way how to do it. So it's absolutely not intuitive to read the time. And then the question, of course, and that was one of my questions when I started Ressence, where do I start?
Right.
I could say, well, maybe I'll need to think something else that is more intuitive to read the time. And I decided not to do it. And the reason is that my clients, the people that buy Ressence watches, they know how to read the time. They have learned it. They've been through the process.
Right.
And okay, that's not an excuse, but once you know, it's super efficient. Because actually our brain is not looking at what direction or which number the hands are showing. No, our brain is just flashing an image. Yeah. And our brain is trained to transform this angle it sees or that you see into an orientation in a time dimension. So you just say, okay, it's like this. For the camera, it's like this. Okay, I have enough time for my next meeting.
Right.
Because this distance, this angle, is enough time. You don't think in minutes. You just think in an angle.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very efficient way to represent, an orientation in time dimension, in the dimension of time. And so I thought, okay, I'll take that over, but I'll make it even more simplified in that sense that that's why a Ressence dial, the main dial is the minutes.
Okay.
And that's usually 80% of the time when you check your watch, you know the hour you are in.
Yeah.
You just want to know how much time, how many minutes, how many angle do I have for my next meeting.
Of course. Yeah.
And so that's why the minute hand is the leading hand on a Ressence. If you really don't know, you're in the middle of the night and you want to check your watch, okay, you have to see the hours and the minutes. But most of the times, we have a meeting this morning and I know, okay, Jesus, I'm a bit too late because the angle is already going the wrong way.
Right.
Is it a lot or not? So I need to send a message. So this is really the way our brain works. And so I took that as a starting point. But it's not intuitive. For sure not. It's not intuitive. But the fact that all the hands on the Ressence dial are in one layer, in one surface, sometimes a bit curved, sometimes a bit less curved, makes that the way we read the time is more adapted to the fact we have two eyes. We're going to talk physiology here today.
Perfect. Let's get into it.
Because when you have two eyes, why do we have two eyes? It's to be able to see depth.
Yeah.
For example, if your guy there is a tiger, and I have only one eye, I cannot see if he's close or not.
Exactly.
So I need to have two eyes to judge the distance. Do I need to run or do I not need to run now?
We're safe. We're safe.
We're safe. We're safe. We're safe. But it is a disadvantage when it comes to reading an information.
Right.
Because your left eye. Why is that? Because on a normal watch, on your beautiful Oris or your beautiful watch, we have different layers of information. We have the date, the dial, the hours, the minutes, the seconds. So there are like 4 or 5 layers.
Yeah.
With my left eye, I look at it from an angle, and from my right eye, I also look at it from an angle. Would those be 2 cameras? There would be 2 images.
Right.
Different images.
Yeah, it even happens when you close one of your eyes, you see a little differently.
You see,
exactly. The other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So our brain unconsciously, constantly puts these 2 images together to make sense of what you're looking at. But if you put everything in one surface, your left eye and your right eye exactly see the same thing. That's why it's very easy to read a page in a book, for example. It goes really fast because our brain does not need to transform all these 3D into 2D all the time. But I'll go the other way. Imagine yourself that suddenly the words in that book would start to float above the paper. My God, it's going to go really slow. Well, that's what we've done. We've put these words back in the paper. That's and this is one of these ergonomical choices that we made when we designed the Ressence dial, is to make it as easy as words on paper, as easy to read as words on paper.
Well, but it seems easy to look at, but to make it or to translate that into a mechanical watch. Yeah, that's you're not a watchmaker.
No, but that's my problem.
Yeah.
That's not your problem as a user of the product.
Of course, yeah.
If you look at your smartphone, are you asking yourself, geez, how do they do the circuit between the accelerometer and the battery here? No one cares. Well, I don't want you to care about it. It's my problem. But we are geeks here. So we want to know how we do things. And I'm also a geek, so I like to know it. And yes, I designed, of course, the whole thing. But again, it is something hidden behind, not because I want to hide the technicity, but I don't want to clutter or make more fuss on the dial than necessary, because in the end, the dial is to express time. Everything you can take off, take out, reduce to only keep the reading of time, the expression of time, I think you have a better product
for sure.
So, but it's true. Yes, the whole mechanism is it's all on ball bearing system. It's with many gears and
it's visible through some of the skeletonized.
In a way, it's a bit like a magic trick, right? You have to you can observe a magic trick and be amazed by what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there is a fascination where you want to know, how is this possible, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of here what we get into is we want to take a look behind the curtain, right?
You want to know my trick. You want to know my magic trick.
That's what they say, right? A good magician should not reveal his tricks, but we appreciate that you share them here. And then speaking of tricks, I think something else that really helped you get this feeling of reading a 2-dimensional image as if on paper was then transitioning to the I think that was it the type 2 or type 3 where it was first oil filled?
Yeah, type 3.
Type 3, exactly, yeah. And that's where you moved into that. What challenges did that present? Because you have a mechanical object, because quartz watches can sometimes be liquid filled or mineral oil filled to provide this legibility. Yeah. But what was the challenge in introducing that to a mechanical watch? Yeah.
So when I started the concept and I was thinking about how am I going to solve this issue, the only concern you have with a mechanical watch, would you put the whole movement in the oil, is the balance wheel.
Right.
Because the viscosity of the oil will prevent the balance wheel to run properly. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can replace the escapement by a solenoid, like a quartz solenoid, something like that. I asked a few companies in Switzerland if they could do that for me, and it like 3 years project, things like that. So I thought, okay,
they're very good.
Impossible
it takes a while.
Yeah, impossible to do this.
Difficult.
So I decided to split basically the watch in two halves. So basically, the dial system is in the oil, and that's what you need to see. But the mechanical movement is in the air. And they're separated physically from each other. So you when you look at the Type 3, for example, you have the case, you have the bottom part that has the same volume as the top part. Top part is in oil, bottom part is in air. Movement is in the air on the bottom, and in between it's closed. There is no opening between those two halves. But still, you have the rotation of the minutes, because again, we only use the minutes from the movement. We need to get these rotational movement into the oil. But there's no opening, because if you put an opening, you can be sure there's going to be a leak. So let's make it completely closed. So we did that through a magnetic transmission. And so there's a disc that is driven by the movement with magnets on it on the air side and rotates the speed of the minutes. And on the oil side, you have a kind of similar symmetrical disc with the same amount of magnets, but the antipole of them.
Right.
And they attract each other, and so they follow each other when they rotate. And that's how the Type 3 has been created. So you already have one challenge, because you put magnets in a mechanical movement.
I was going to ask. That's for anyone who knows a little bit about mechanical watches. You know that it's kind of sworn enemies, right? What was the challenge there?
Well, the advantage is that when you're not a watchmaker, you don't care so much about it.
Of course.
But still, I wanted to avoid the watches run too fast, because that's what's happening when they magnetize. Actually, what I did was I combined 4 magnets. So actually, there are 12 magnets in the transmission. There are 6 in the oil, 6 in the air.
Okay.
And they're combined in 3 pairs every time. So at every 20 minutes, you have 2 magnets, 2 magnets, 2 magnets, and they pair with 2 magnets, 2 magnets in the oil, and their polarities are put in that way that you create a flux.
Right.
So and then behind the magnets there is a magnetic conductor every time, and so you create actually a flux of magnetic fields, and you also, by the same time, you avoid the magnetic energy to spread in the watch, because it's easier for the magnetic field to go through this conductor than go through air.
Right.
So you don't lose the magnetic energy. Actually, you recuperate it.
You keep it focused.
That's the word. Yeah.
Right,
You keep it focused around the magnets. Okay. So 3 times. Then still, for those who were good students in the lessons of physics, magnets generate their own fields. For that you cannot avoid. They will always generate their own fields. So for that, the movement has been encapsulated in a mu metal plate, actually, that is larger than the magnetic field.
Okay.
And so you cannot block a magnetic field, but you can deflect it. And so the fields, they go into that material and they die out in it. So they
have no chance to get to the movement.
Yeah, they don't get to the movement, because they are taken away from the movement so far that actually their energy is zero when it arrives there. Okay. And that's how we manage the magnetism in these watches. And it works really well, because we never have a watch that has a problem with magnetism.
But then there's another problem, because the density or the size of the oil inside the case also changes depending on the temperature.
Yes, that was something I didn't think of when I thought I'm gonna put oil in the watch.
Right.
But okay, I discovered it. So I had to find a solution. And basically, the very, very first Type 3s, I integrated a membrane in it to accommodate for this volume changes due to temperature changes. The range was a bit too small, so quite quickly we went to a bellow system that we still have today. There are 7 micro bellows that will accommodate for the oil changes in volume. The advantage also of that is that when we fill the watches, when we fill them with oil, we fill them with oil at -5 degrees.
Okay.
That means that the molecules of oil are compact.
Yeah, it's contracted.
Yeah, it's
right?
contracted.
Yeah.
And so from the moment you put the watch in a normal environment at like 20 degrees or on your wrist at 26, usually the watch is at 26 on your wrist.
Okay.
The oil is already expanded. And so the bellows are already under pressure. That means that the pressure inside the oil is always a little higher than the atmospheric pressure. And the advantage of that is that the oil will never gasify in the oil. And this is the way we avoid having a bubble in the watch.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually wondering about that because we've seen other watches that do have the bubble, and you see it shrinking and growing as the temperature changes. But yeah, it's true that with your watches you have this. Well, it's why it looks almost magical, right? There's no, if you don't know that there's oil, it has this almost complete lack of refraction, and it has this sort
it looks like an OLED display almost.
Exactly. And so speaking of OLED displays and then technology and how it ties into Ressence watches, you also have a hybrid technology in some of your watches, right?
Yeah.
How does that work? The app connectivity and that aspect of some of your watches.
Yeah, you're referring to the Type 2.
Yes.
Actually, the word hybrid is not the right word.
Okay.
Let me correct you.
Yes.
Hybrid means that you would have 2 sources of powering the watch. Yeah, like a hybrid car.
Right.
It has a petrol engine or a diesel engine and an electric engine. Well, the Type 2 only has one engine. It's the mechanical movement.
Right.
There is no second engine. So the technology, we gave it the name E-Crown. That's the name of the technology. And the reason why we took that name is because we want to focus on the fact that we are only automating the crown function. So you turning the crown of your watch is what we have automated.
Yeah.
Not the working of the watch.
No.
So the mechanical link between the dial, the hands for us, and the barrel is always there. There is never an interruption. Even when you set the watch, even when E-Crown activates, the connection is always physical. There is not a sliding system like you have on a normal crown. You have a sliding system when you when you set the time. Actually, you force it over a certain friction. You don't have that in the Type 2. We integrated a differential system in it.
Okay.
So what is a differential system? Actually, you have one shaft that comes out. That's your exit shaft. But you can have 2 input shafts.
Okay.
So there's one that is always running, and that's the mechanical one. And it drives through the differential. It drives the module. But it drives really slowly because it drives the speed of the minutes.
Of course, yeah.
And then you have the other one that is always off, and that's the electric one. And it's only when you set it that this motor starts to spin, and it cannot go into the movement because the movement is running. So the energy goes into the shaft that is the exit, that is your dial.
Right.
So when the watch sets, actually the movement continues running really slowly, but the motor also does the rotation and it spins like 100 times faster than the movement. So it will start to set the watch automatically. This is the way we approached E-Crown. So E-Crown is basically an automated crown, as if we would have put an automatic gearbox in a car instead of a manual gearbox.
Right. Right.
But then I'll make it even more complicated because you can still shift manually with the Type 2.
Right.
So it is a system that is really focusing on the crown functions, and it goes further than that because you don't know the time.
No.
When you need to set the watch, so you need to take your phone. Well, eCrown knows the time because you've learned it once to the watch. Once you set it manually, it will remember it.
Okay.
And you can do that for 2 time zones. So there are 2 time zones in the watch that are programmable, if I could call it like that. So when you set the watch with the back case, because we don't have a crown on the side, when you set the watch with the back case, actually the time zone you're in will be overwritten by the time you set the watch in.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I'm in time zone 1 and I set the watch to another time, it will overwrite the time zone 1.
Right.
If I go to time zone 2 and I do also a modification in the time, it will overwrite it for that time zone. That's simply said what you have to do. What it does. What it also does is that it monitors your mechanical watch all the time. So when you wear the watch, it will check every hour. At the hour, it will check the time, the mechanical time, automatically. You don't have to do it anymore. So your watch basically can never be really wrong.
Right.
Because if it's wrong, when it checks after an hour, every hour, and it's wrong, 3 minutes later, it checks again.
Okay.
If it's correct, it doesn't check for an hour. But if it's wrong, 3 minutes later, it checks again.
So you have a little watchmaker in your...
there is a little watchmaker in the watch.
Self-regulating system.
Yeah.
You know, the whole idea here was we are a 21st century company with a 21st century vision on fine watchmaking. How can we apply 21st century technology to a mechanical watch that makes sense? I did not want to touch the mechanical integrity of the watch because that's the beauty of a mechanical watch. It's the ticking.
Right.
Why is it important? Because the ticking gives empathy. That's why if you have 2 watches, a digital one and a mechanical one, and you can only save one, most people will save the mechanical one because they have more empathy for it. Why do they have more empathy for a mechanical watch? Because they can relate to it. It's again our story with humans. If I talk to you and you answer in Spanish to me, I will have a difficult relation with you. And so our relation will be not as good as with Daan, because we both speak Dutch, even though he speaks Holland and I speak Belgian Dutch.
Right.
We both understand each other. And so our relationship will probably be in a faster way, it will be a stronger relationship. Right. And that's the same. We will have empathy for each other. Yeah. And so it's the same for a product. We look at products like we look at humans or like we look at our pets. And that is why I really wanted to keep the mechanical movement in our watches. So all our watches are mechanical watches, and they're not hybrid.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit like if you're running out of the burning house, do you grab your dog or do you grab your smartphone, right? I mean, well, I think today there might be some people who answer that in a very problematic way. But,
dogs have problems now.
But you understand what it is to be a living being, right?
Yeah.
And perhaps somebody who doesn't speak your language, you sort of it's hard to associate. It's hard to find that camaraderie. Yet with a mechanical watch, you kind of understand. We have a ticking system within ourselves, and so you almost it's easier for you to.
The consequence of that is when I reflect it, I think that today when we see robots, you have these brands that come with robots like Honda for years, and then Boston Dynamics, and they look a bit creepy, the Boston Dynamics robots. But when you make them look a bit nice, well, I think. Today we think, oh no, I don't want a robot in my house. Well, I'm pretty sure that we will accept them super easily.
Well, there's this dog by Sony, right? The Aibo or Aigo. Oh, yeah. It was quite cute.
Yeah.
Or it looked cute.
Yeah, it looks cute, but if it interacts like we want them to interact, like we expect them to interact, we will accept it super easily. I think that today we see it like, ooh, robots in my house, but I think it's going to go super fast once these robots are okay you don't have the impression it's going to kill you, then I think it's going to go super fast.
When you can override that part of your brain where it tells you this is something different, this is a threat, right?
Yeah.
And you want to see it in 3D and you want to know that you're safe from it.
Yeah.
And then when it starts to become so good at tricking your brain into thinking that it's something living and natural, like a dog or a pet or another human, then it's a quick shift in the brain.
Yep.
No, but that's interesting how these principles all kind of tie into your watches as well.
Yep.
Was there also some part of you that looked back at your fascination with products and these mechanical objects that you disassemble and you tear apart that also brought you towards it, making it a mechanical watch?
Yes, well, it's for sure that the aspect of the, how would I call it, the honesty of gears is so beautiful. It's so honest, and everyone can relate to it. Even if you're not a technical person, you can perfectly understand that a mechanical movement can get stuck just because of sand in it, or friction, or no oil, or everyone that is, and I know a lot of people that are not technical, but they all will understand, okay, gears, yes, they roll into each other, and that's how the watch works. It stops there, huh? Yeah. I once I was in a hiring process in the company, and it was for a salesperson, and I systematically asked this person, explain me how an engine works in a car. And I was amazed. No one can explain it to me. The best answers was, there is something with cylinders. They move up and down, and then okay, but how does it translate into your wheels? So most people are not very technical.
No.
But we watch geeks, we love it. So I also have to restrain myself. And say, well, you don't buy the watch for the mechanics. A Ressence, you don't buy it for the mechanics, even though it's super complicated.
Right.
I don't want to bother you. Your smartphone is also super complicated.
Yeah.
They don't bother you with the technicity inside. So I also want to, well, this is just our vision. Huh? I'm not saying the others are wrong. It's just our way of looking at fine watchmaking.
Yeah. In the 21st century.
With this context, yes.
Excellent. So speaking again, and sorry, we keep coming back to the mechanical side.
Yeah, go ahead. But that's fine. It's fine. That's fine. I like it.
And I don't mean to throw you off with this question, but of course, now you said that you're using these Edabase, as at least as a basic element to base the mechanical aspect on. Have you considered moving towards an in-house development of the engine?
Yeah, sure, of course. We are working on something like that. The fact is that what we ask is so uncommon that it's not always easy to get to a result we want. Because you always have in front of you, you have watchmakers. I have to say, no, I don't want this. I just want one axle, nothing else. It's very hard for them. And when I say, I don't want to see the gears in the movement, I don't want to see the barrel, I don't want to see the balance wheel, just hide it away. And they're like, no, that's so beautiful, Benoît. So, yes, I know it's beautiful. I also like it, but it's not the point.
Yeah, it's not Ressence.
Yeah, it's not our point.
Right.
It's not the point we want to make.
Okay, fantastic. And tell us a little bit about, and of course this is also a little bit wrong to make you pick favorites, but what are some of the models that you've produced, or even colorways within some of the models? Yeah. What are some of your favorites? Give us a handful of some of the ones that you've produced.
You mean the models that we made? For us, I think still the Type 3 is one of the products that incarnates the best what we stand for as a brand.
Right.
Why is that? Well, there are many reasons, but the main reason is the dematerialization level that we achieved with the black dial.
Right.
Actually, there is no watch anymore. It's only a dial. So when you look at it, there is no case, there is no bezel, there is no hands. Well, there are graphical hands, but you don't see the discs also, they're gone. So it's a kind of a screen, a mechanical screen, but it is a screen where you look at. It's mechanical, yes. And then of course you need to hold it on your wrist, so there is a strap attached to it. So I think that this watch goes in a sense, it's the purest form of what we stand for as a brand.
Right, that's sort of the pinnacle, this sort of monolith that it becomes. Especially you mentioned in the black colorway.
Yeah, in the black color, it's even more striking.
Excellent.
But then, of course, there are other products that I'm very, very happy with the Type 2. Even though when I tell you a little story, when we launched it, and it was at SIHH, it's not called like that anymore. Now it's Watches and Wonders. When we launched it, we had people from Richemont, because at that time it was Richemont that was the leading force in that show. They came on my booth and they said, you have no reason of being here with such a product. And I was like, ooh, I'm touching something here.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, this person reacted like maybe you would say, well, it's a hybrid watch. How can you do that? I could not explain this person. Well, we only automated the crown, not the whole watch.
Right.
But just to say that the way we look at watchmaking is so different, actually. We very often think we have one foot in watchmaking, and for sure we have one foot in fine watchmaking. I can assure you that it's real watchmaking what we do. But we also have a foot outside that world. And IoT is also a foot we have in IoT with that product. And there is no reason why we cannot combine these two worlds.
Right.
There is no reason why we cannot combine very different visions on fine watchmaking and apply them to fine watchmaking by using the traditional way of making a gear, the traditional way of making a ball bearing or whatever. All these things, we use them, we apply them, but we apply them very differently, and the result is obviously a very different watch.
Right. And in getting here to the end, who or what continues to inspire you in the world of watches today?
In the world of watches, I'm not inspired by the world of watches.
Right.
I'm inspired by actually what we are working on is to develop a portfolio in which we have defined certain dimensions of the brand. And these dimensions, they represent the ecosystem or the cosmos of the universe of Ressence. And what we are working on is to say, okay, we need a watch that answers this demand, this context, this type of functionality.
Right.
We want a product that represents this type. And so we created actually this rose, this wind rose, in which we are developing products that once it's done, and it's going to take some years before we're there, we will have, I would say, an answer to all the dimensions we want Ressence to be present in.
Okay.
The foot outside the watch world. So everything is, of course, the common thing is fine watchmaking, but with a tomato sauce, with courgette sauce, with a cheese sauce. But the main dish, the chicken, is always the chicken.
Right.
So we always try to flavor it differently.
Excellent.
Voilà. So that's what we're working on.
Perfect. And I think it would also be nice to take a look at the catalogue raisonné. It was also sort of recently-ish introduced. Tell people a little bit about
Catalogue raisonné comes basically from the world of art. So the name comes from there. Basically, it's a book that we made that we will update every 2 years, in which every watch that we made so far has at least one page. So every watch is represented the same way on every page, and you have a small explanation on that typical watch.
Right.
So when we made them, how many we made, a few parameters like finishing or the materials used, and then a small text explanation. Very often, just from our experience, make it a bit lighter. The idea was really to say, okay, there are many reasons why we do this, but the main one is that my brain is going down, so I need to write it down. I don't remember everything.
Right.
But no, the basic idea was here to say, okay, you are a newcomer in Ressence, because still today, new people discover the brand. Well, look, this is not a one-day fly. What we sometimes have as younger brands, people say, "Ooh, I never heard about it. Are you sure?"
It's also to build your credibility.
Yeah, it gives a backbone to the brand somehow. Yeah. For collectors, when they want to buy a second-hand watch, at least they have an idea. Okay,
it's a reference.
Did you make
point.
100? Did you make 2? That's a difference. So these things, so basic information, basically about each watch we made so far. So yes, it's a nice book.
Yeah, I think
it's already quite thick.
It's an excellent project. It is. I mean, and I mean, next year represents then 15 years of the brand being around. Cool. So I think that it's really it's. I think I would recommend to our audience to check it out. You sell it through the Ressence website.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think it's a great way to have this overview of the brand, look back at almost 15 years of projects, and we had a look through it at during Geneva Watch Days, and it was brilliant to see some of these models that weren't on my radar. Some of them you recognize, but others you sort of go, wow, this is
well, there are pieces in there that were never public.
Exactly.
That we just made one piece for a private customer. Nobody saw them, but they're funny. There are funny things inside that also shows the versatility of the brand. Because in the end, Ressence is a platform, and for example, we just released a little teaser about a project we've done with Chantal Martin. She's an artist. She's a graphical artist. And so we gave her basically a white canvas. It's the dial of the watch. And we said, please express yourself on this watch. And that was also, by the way, the success of the Silberstein, Alain Silberstein edition we did with Revolution. It's really this idea of offering a surface on which people can express themselves. So it's very nice actually to have these inputs.
I think the Ressence truly does have that perfect balance of being technically very impressive for those who enjoy that, and for those who don't, it can be just a very functional object that does what it does beautifully, but also to have this great aesthetic interest to it, and I think, like you mentioned, a blank canvas is a way to look at it, and I think that I think we can perhaps wrap it up here. But if you have anything else that you would like to plug, anything you'd like to highlight,
it was long. It was long enough. It was good.
Excellent. Good. Perfect. Hey,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us for this chat. Of course, we ask our audience, as always, to like, comment, and subscribe, and of course to tune in next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.